Jay Baruchel is unapologetically Canadian. So while he has appeared in big American films such as Clint Eastwood's $1 Million Baby and the comedy Knocked Up with Seth Rogen, he has proudly chosen to create his own work here in Canada. You may remember his popular and decidedly Canadian feature film, Goon. Now its sequel, Goon, Last of the Enforcers, is at theaters across the province. And Jay Baruchel joins us now on why Canadian films matter. It's great to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
I don't know why we haven't met up until now, because I love your films and I love hockey. And
well, listen, it's never too late.
Good. This is your directorial debut, isn't it, with this film?
It is indeed. Yeah.
Why'd you want to do that?
Oh boy, it's something I've wanted to do since I was a little kid. You know, my first day on set as an actor was when I was 12. At 9 is when I said I wanted to be a director. So even when I started at 12, Mom said to me, you know, you want to go to film school and be a director. Being on set is the best possible film school in the world. So I've been waiting to do this since I was a kid. But why this film specifically is purely because Michael Dow's friend and mentor who directed the first Goon, circumstances dictated that he couldn't return for number 2, and then it was our lead, Sean William Scott, and another one of our leads, Marc-Andre Grandin, who each sort of asked me if I'd think about doing it. And
honestly, you hadn't thought about it before?
Well, of course I had.
Yes,
of course I had, but I would never share that. It's, I believe in the chain of command, and Dow's is also, it was his movie. And so Jesse, my writing partner, and I, we built the second script for him to direct. That being said, as I'm invested in it and I care a great deal for this story and these characters, yeah, I'd be lying if I said I hadn't visualized every second of it in my head while we were writing it.
And how'd you find the experience of actually doing it?
The greatest thing that's ever happened to me.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, not everything comes at a price, right? Like I have a prescription for heartburn medication I didn't used to need, but no, it's the greatest art form the world's come up with, in my opinion. And
what's the best part of directing that's so gratifying?
Wow, that's a very good question. I think it's going to sound really hokey, moments when everything hits a sweet spot, when the camera does what you hope it will, and your actors are firing on all cylinders, and you are watching live a classic moment that you grew up watching in movies, you know, since your dad rented them for you when you were little. And so to watch movie moments come to life in real time is pretty special.
There's nothing hokey about that.
Okay,
that's
cool.
Absolutely, that's a perfect answer.
Cool, thanks.
And how often do you think over the course of doing the directing for this picture did you get that feeling?
Oh, countless times throughout the day. You know, it's weird. It's because you have so much stuff to worry about. You're watching the clock. You know, you've only got X amount of minutes each day to do what you've got to do. You've got a lot to do each day. There's a crew of 100 people, a lot of cast, and so I constantly, there's a voice in the back of my head that like really didn't want me to ever succumb to the stress, because I've been waiting to do this my whole life. And so I you know, Mom said to me when I was little, you don't have to hate your job. You should, just because you see grown-ups unhappy doesn't mean you have to be one. She said, find something you would do for free and find a way to get paid to do it. And there I was in the trenches on my movie, and so it was never once lost on me.
Awesome. I presume it was an option for you to make this movie in the United States. Mm-hmm. You didn't make the movie in the United States.
Yeah.
How come?
Well, you know, we are, so this is like a U.S.-Canadian co-production, but we could not have made this particular movie in L.A. in the studio system. There are blessings and curses that come with each. So while the big studios have a lot more resources to play with,
and money,
and a much bigger sort of soapbox, and you can reach people in China and all that stuff, which is wonderful. But they're beholden to other masters because they're big, bloated corporate endeavors, right? So even if it's a movie, it's still a $300 million investment, and people watch their money. And so you end up having to aspire to appeal to as broad an audience as possible. And when you try to make something universal, you end up making something for no one, I think. I think that here, we sort of, it's about picking your punches, right? I think we've used
interesting metaphor, given what the movie's about.
Fair enough. We've used a false metric in this country. We've always sort of said, well, we can't compete with them, so why bother? And well, that's assuming we can't compete in their fight, right? But
what's the fight we should be competing in?
Okay, so every Saturday across this country, there's bar fights happening. There's little men taking down big guys all the time, and that's because they fight their fight. And so we can't crash spaceships into the Hollywood sign like they can, but they can't be as harsh and have as much teeth and come at it with the chutzpah and balls and the handmade, clumsy sort of blue-collar language. Like there's all these sort of things that we can do that they can't because we don't answer to all those masters, right? So rather than trying to beat them at their own game, play our game and win that fight. And this is a movie that has so much soul, and I call it a handmade movie. It's handmade in that you feel the presence of people in it. You know, it's not a cookie cutter thing made just to sort of fulfill some obligation. This is a love letter, a bunch of people's love letters, and you don't really get to make a lot of those in the States when you have to answer to God knows how many investors.
Can I see your arm?
Yeah.
What does that say?
That says Ropel, R-O-P-E-L-L.
Who's that?
That is my mom's maiden name. That is the family that I come from, my mom's side. We've been in Nova Scotia for about 300 years, and mom was 6 of 8 kids, and that name will not last much longer. And so it was my sort of tribute to my granddad and to my mom. And
your granddad, because he
Robert Ropel was a hero. He was a very, very mild-mannered man, God-fearing man who also was a career gunner. He was an artilleryman in the Royal Canadian Armed Forces for 30, 40 years. Left Canada in 1939 to fight the Germans. Made it back alive, and then as soon as he got home, re-enlisted to fight the Japanese. Was in the first UN peacekeeping mission in Cyprus. Responsible for cataloging a great deal of the artifacts of the Canadian War Museum. I'm very, very proud of the family I come from, especially my mom's side. And
the reason I asked you all this is because, and you tell me if I'm overreaching here, it seems to me you have a lot of reasons to feel very kindly towards Canada.
I do.
Not the least of which is where you're from, who your people are,
that's it,
what the subject matter of your movie is, the fact that it's so uniquely Canadian.
Thanks.
The Americans probably couldn't figure out how to make that kind of movie down there anyway.
I don't think so.
So I'm wondering if that's all part of the stew that leads you to conclude that
100%. I don't mean to compare filmmaking to soldiering because one allows us the right to vote, one entertains us. So, but like this is my, it's a lump in my throat that I never went to the Royal Military College in Kingston. It was never in cadets, never did any of that stuff.
Unlike everybody else in the family.
Most of my mom's family, I always felt like I didn't pull my weight in that respect, and so.
But you're putting us on the map in a different way.
So I'm trying to do.
Good. I want to ask you a bit of a, I know this is a hockey movie, but let's do a baseball metaphor here. Here's a bit of a high, tight fastball. You ready? You hear this all the time. Yeah. English Canadian movies punch below their weight.
Yeah.
Do you think that's true?
I think a lot of the times, I think a lot of the time it is, I think, and that's down to a few things. But the most important thing is that I think in English Canada for too long we have endeavored to make one kind of movie for one audience.
What's that kind of movie?
I'd say we've made movies for film students and film critics and
As opposed to?
Canadians. That's kind of what I like to say is like we don't make Goon for Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver. We make Goon for Calgary and Halifax and Winnipeg and Hamilton and Barrie. And I think that it can't be overstated the cultural repercussions of not being able to see yourself reflected in your own cinema. That we are English Canada is we're definitely lacking in that, and I think that until the average guy in Calgary sees and hears himself and his friends and his family in the cinema and 100 feet high and looking as slick and sexy as the Americans next door look, until that happens, we will always be punching below our weight. And that's down to what I call the Avro-Arrow effect, which is throughout our history, we have been kneecapped as a people by a minority of people here who have stood to benefit from the status quo maintaining. And
that's a reference to what?
So the Avro-Arrow, I remember my granddad sitting me down at the kitchen table when I was 4 years old, and he was getting choked up telling me the story of for those who don't know, the greatest fighter plane that never flew was the Avro-Arrow.
Built 45 minutes from the studio.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So people forget that. When NORAD was founded in the Cold War, war was Soviets against the Americans, but we were the ones in between. Mm-hmm. So we were the ones that were going to have to deal with them first if anything ever happened. And so the Canadian Air Force went around to all these different big American aerospace manufacturers and had this unbuildable criteria for a plane. Had to be faster than any other plane on Earth, had to fly longer distance, higher altitude, and bigger payload. And they all said you have to pick one. You can't have all of these. And then Avro said, no, we think we can do it.
And they did.
And they did.
Okay, but the Diefenbaker government cancels it, and the metaphor you're trying to...
And then Black Monday, they don't just cancel it, they destroy the ones that they've created.
Yeah.
And my point is that this has happened in many facets of Canadian industry and culture throughout history, where a few people here have stood to benefit from keeping us sort of hindered.
So you've got me, my curiosity piqued here. Who's invested in the status quo, and
I would
who
think,
isn't?
I think there are broadcasters and distributors who are profiting from the status quo. There are people whose entire sort of business model is 90% of it is releasing foreign films that come with their own posters, trailers, ad campaigns. So when it comes to the 10% of local homegrown stuff that they actually have to build a poster and a trailer and an ad campaign for, they've already assumed they're taking a bath on it. So do you think that they try?
Their heart's not in it,
and they're not hungry, and there's no sort of skin in the game. And
what do we do about that, Jay?
It takes a few, anything of merit, any change of merit takes a few people living slightly less conveniently than they would otherwise. And so what that takes is people that have opportunities, bona fide, sincere opportunities to create elsewhere, electing to create here. And and listen, people don't have to like our movie. People want to hate on our movie, they can. But what they have to do is beat us to it. Come at us more ambitious. Make a bigger, better, more successful movie than we have. Reach Canadian audiences better than we have. We've set the gauntlet. We want people to come like that. That's the whole point of all of this. You don't have to like Goon 2, but if you dislike it, beat us then. Do a bigger movie. Reach more people, more average Canadian film goers. Like that we're talking, this is something so incredibly vital. You take it for granted. You don't realize what it's like, I don't think they quite realize what it's like to go to a movie theater your entire life and never see a movie that takes place in your country.
And when it does take place in your country is usually a stand-in for a big American city.
Yes, it is.
How much do you hate seeing that?
It bums the hell out of me when movies are, for all intents and purposes are Canadian. They sound Canadian, look Canadian, are made by Canadians, clearly and paid for by Canadians. And then someone takes their wallet out and there's American money in the wallet for some bloody reason,
Yeah.
So yeah, I dream of a time where it's not just about combating the brain drain. That's one part of it. It's also about like making this the place that people come from elsewhere to want to create.
How much did the first Goon movie cost to make?
It depends who you ask. I think all told us around 10 million Canadian.
How much you make?
That I'm not allowed to talk about.
Reed, that's proprietary information?
Yes, it is.
You made it back, I presume.
Well, I think so, yeah.
In spades?
Yeah, we did pretty good, I think.
Well, that's my point. I mean, you've demonstrated that you can make not only fun movies, but profitable movies.
Well, that's the thing, and Trailer Park Boys has shown this above and beyond. Now, there was nothing ever aspirational about that show. Like, there was not this sort of, so go back to the example I just used, when people put American money in a wallet, that's this servile hope that maybe one day we might increase our chances of being on the shelves at Blockbuster, right? And that keeps us down. Trailer Park Boys didn't give a shit about any of that. They just made their show, and people loved it. We fell in love with it, and we kept falling in love with it. We fell in love with it so much that Ireland heard about it, and Australia heard about it, and America heard about it, and the UK heard about it, and now their tours are sold out whenever they do their live shows across the states. Like we can make stuff. We've done it in music, we've done it in sports. It's this weird thing where in cinema we refuse to see ourselves as a big deal audience.
You mentioned sports.
Yeah,
I'm going to steel myself for this part of the discussion. Okay, Jay? Okay, I guess we got to do this. Can we please see this commercial for a certain hockey team that I believe plays in Montreal? I've heard something about them. I don't know very much about them, but I understand they've won a few Stanley Cups along the way. Roll it, please.
That's what's up. Hi, Max Pacioretty. I've got a strawberry banana smoothie for you, loaded with potassium. Great first thing after a workout. Is chocolate milk actually good after a workout? How often do you work out? You have nice marks on.
How much fun was that?
that's the best.
Yeah, isn't that terrific?
That's the best. That's a pretty fun 2 days of shooting.
You're a Montrealer originally.
Yes, sir.
But you live in Toronto now,
I do now,
Jay.
yeah.
So can we talk about this odd affection you still have for your former hometown hockey team? And is there anything we can do about this?
I mean, if the Leafs can somehow win 12 Stanley Cups in my lifetime and catch up to us,
You're
maybe.
a cruel son of a...
No, absolutely not. No, I have a great affinity for Toronto. I really do. I think it's an awesome town. A lot of my best friends in the world live here. I'll be here for a very, very long time. I will never root for a single Toronto sports team.
You know what? I totally respect that.
That's the thing.
I totally respect that.
I wouldn't. You wouldn't have it any other way.
No.
You wouldn't want a bandwagon. You wouldn't. I can't respect a Leafs fan that becomes a Habs fan, nor could a Leafs fan respect a Habs fan that becomes a Leafs fan.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
And yet, if you think about it, some of the best players and/or executives have played for both teams.
I know.
Isn't that shocking? Like from Frank Mahovlich to Ken Dryden.
Yeah, no kidding. No, that's our country. Red and blue on Saturday night is our country.
Very fun. So, you've been to Montreal Canadiens hockey games in Toronto.
Yes.
What is that experience like walking into the Air Canada Centre with a Habs shirt on?
Oh, it's fine because there's like 50% of the stadium's red.
That is true. That is so unfortunate and so true.
That's the thing. It's like people, for a few reasons, there's like two things. Habs it goes back to the original six thing when you had to pick one of two teams. So there's like Habs fans across the country. Plus, there's two big Anglo diasporas that happened in Quebec that sent a great deal of Habs fans into the 416. So we're fairly well represented in most games I've gone to.
Gotcha. Let's just finish up on this. your favorite Canadian film of all time?
Oh, that's an awesome question. I would say it'd be Videodrome would be up there.
Cronenberg?
Yeah, Cronenberg is like, I worship at the altar of Cronenberg. I think like he's, he is the first artist that I heard when I was a kid told me that, not personally in interviews, I mean, but he was the first artist I'd seen in interviews that was from here who said you could do it here. You know, everyone else had kind of bailed, and he was the first one I noticed that didn't. So Videodrome is incredibly important to me. I would say there's a movie called Junior, which is a movie about, it's a documentary about 1 year in the QMJHL, and it just follows a bunch of junior hockey players in rural Quebec, and it is just like nothing else. And you don't see a single minute of hockey in that game. It's just the kids and what they're dealing with, hearing from their parents and their coaches and getting contradictory advice and all this different stuff. And then... Damn. Because there's a whole bunch.
That's two. That's good.
There's two, and then I'll say Goon Last of the Enforcers.
Why not? Plug the new one. Plug the new one. I can't tell you how disappointed I am in this interview. Because your reputation for profanity precedes you, and we heard one minor league swear word and one sort of, borderline religious profanity.
I put on
and that's
my good
it.
shirt. I'm in TVO mode, man. I want
best behavior.
That's it. Exactly right.
Got it. Jay, we wish you great luck with the new movie, and we thank you so much for coming in to TVO
tonight. Thank you for having
tonight.
us, Steve. It was lovely to be here.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario on behalf of its more than 85,000 members and 23,000 students.